You know, there's an old saying that wisdom doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you listen closely enough, you can hear those whispers echo across centuries, connecting souls who never met, but understood the same eternal truths. Today we're going to explore the wisdom of two such souls. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome at its height, and Denzel Washington, a man who climbed from the streets of Mount Vernon to become not just a Hollywood legend, but a modern-day philosopher in his own right. Picture this, a cold morning in ancient Rome. Marcus Aurelius sits at his wooden desk before dawn, the weight of an empire on his shoulders, writing words that would echo through millennia. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Now fast forward 2,000 years to a young Denzel Washington, standing in front of his bathroom mirror in a small New York apartment, repeating to himself, "Be careful of your thoughts, they become your words. Be careful of your words, they become your actions." Two men separated by oceans of time, united by a profound understanding that success isn't just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process, and that's what we're here to talk about today. Welcome to Rise Stoically, where we don't just talk about success, we dissect it, understand it, and rebuild it from the ground up using timeless wisdom. If you're tired of quick fixes and empty promises, if you're ready for real transformation, then settle in. This isn't just another video about success. This is your guide to rewiring your mind for greatness. Before we dive deep into these 5 powerful principles that transformed both an emperor and an actor into legends, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to learn isn't just information, it's transformation. And trust me, you'll want to be part of this journey. Principle 1. The power of inner dialogue. Let me tell you something about inner dialogue that most people never realize. It's not just the quiet conversation you have with yourself. It's the architect of your reality. When Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal about maintaining calm during chaos, he wasn't just writing, he was building his mental fortress. Take the plague that hit Rome during his reign. Cities were burning with fever, the streets were filled with death, and panic was spreading faster than the disease itself. But in his private writings, we find something remarkable. Instead of panic, we find perspective. "Focus on what is within your power," he wrote. "The rest is for fate to decide." Now shift your focus to 1981. A young Denzel Washington is auditioning for his breakthrough role in Carbon Copy. He's been rejected countless times, but something's different today. In interviews, he later revealed his secret. "I had been talking to myself every morning, not like some crazy person, but really programming my mind. I'd tell myself, today I'm not auditioning for them, they're auditioning for me." This isn't just positive thinking. This is mental reprogramming at its finest. And here's how you're going to master it. First, understand that your morning mindset ritual isn't just about feeling good. It's about building your mental architecture for the day. Here's exactly how to do it. Start with what I call the Emperor's Hour, the first 60 minutes of your day. Marcus Aurelius would begin before dawn, not because he had to, but because he understood that owning your morning means owning your mind. Find a quiet space, your own private Rome, if you will. Keep a journal nearby, just like Marcus did. Begin with 3 deep breaths. This isn't some new age nonsense. This is ancient wisdom validated by modern science. Each breath is a reset button for your nervous system. Then start your inner dialogue. But here's the key most people miss. Structure it like a real conversation. First movement, gratitude. What strengths do I bring to this day? List them specifically. Second movement, challenge. What obstacles am I likely to face? Be honest with yourself. Third movement, strategy. How will I use my strengths to overcome these obstacles? Denzel Washington practices what he calls spiritual push-ups every morning. He reads something inspiring, then immediately applies it to his current challenges. During his preparation for training day, he would spend an hour each morning in character, having conversations with himself about power, corruption, and morality. Principle 2. The discipline of consistent action. You know, folks often talk about motivation, like it's some kind of magical fuel that successful people have in abundance. But let me tell you something I learned from studying both Marcus Aurelius and Denzel Washington. Motivation is a myth. What you need is discipline. Marcus Aurelius wrote something profound in his journals. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. Now think about that for a moment. Here's the most powerful man in the known world, and he's struggling with the same morning battle we all face. The difference, he understood that action precedes motivation, not the other way around. Let me take you to another scene. It's 4:30 a.m. in Los Angeles, 1999. Denzel Washington is already at the gym, preparing for his role in Remember the Titans. The movie doesn't start filming for another 3 months. But here's what he knows that most don't. Success is built in the quiet hours when no one's watching. Ease is a greater threat to progress than hardship, Denzel often says. And he's right, but let me break down exactly how this discipline of consistent action works in the real world. First, let's talk about what I call the Emperor's Blueprint. Marcus Aurelius divided his day into non-negotiable blocks. Not because he had to, he was the emperor, he could have done whatever he pleased. But he understood that structure creates freedom. Here's how you build your own Emperor's Blueprint. Start with your power hours. These are the first 3 hours of your day. For Denzel, these hours are sacred. During his preparation for Fences, he would use these hours to rehearse, even when filming other projects. No phone calls, no emails, no distractions. Just pure focused action toward his most important goal. But here's where most people get it wrong. They try to change everything at once. Instead, use what I call the Aurelius method. Start with one non-negotiable hour. Master it, own it, then expand. Create what Marcus Aurelius called your daily duties. These aren't just tasks, they're commitments to your future self. Write them down the night before, just as Marcus wrote his journal entries by candlelight. But here's the key, make them specific and achievable. Instead of work out, write 30 minutes of strength training focusing on upper body. Instead of practice my craft, write spend 45 minutes rehearsing scene 3 with complete focus. Denzel Washington has a practice he calls bookending the day. He starts and ends each day with review and preparation. In the morning, he reviews his goals and visualizes his success. At night, he evaluates his performance and prepares for tomorrow. No excuses, no days off. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being consistent. Now let me tell you about the resistance log. Marcus Aurelius kept track of the thoughts that tried to stop him from taking action. Too tired, not the right time, maybe tomorrow. He wrote them down, not to beat himself up, but to recognize them as what they were, temporary obstacles, not permanent barriers. Here's how you create your own resistance log. Get a small notebook, something you can carry everywhere. Every time you feel resistance to taking action, write down the exact thought. Next to it, write what you did anyway. At the end of each week, review your victories over resistance. Remember, this isn't about motivation. When Denzel was preparing for Malcolm X, he didn't wait until he felt motivated to study Malcolm's speeches. He studied them every single day, motivated or not. When Marcus Aurelius faced barbarian invasions, he didn't wait until he felt motivated to address the crisis. He took action because that's what leaders do. Principle 3. The perspective of eternal time. Let me tell you about a powerful practice Marcus Aurelius used that I call the cosmic view. Every morning he would imagine himself looking down at Rome from above, seeing the city as just a tiny spot in the vast expanse of the empire. Then he'd imagine the empire as a tiny spot in the world, and the world as a tiny spot in time. This wasn't just some philosophical exercise, it was a tool for maintaining sanity in the face of overwhelming pressure. Picture this, Rome, 165 AD. A plague is ravaging the empire. Marcus Aurelius stands on his balcony, watching as smoke rises from the funeral pyres. In his journal that night he writes, "Look back over the past, with its changing empires that rose and fell, and you can foresee the future too. This isn't pessimism, it's perspective. The kind of perspective that allows you to make decisions based on eternal principles rather than temporary circumstances." Now let's jump to 2001. Denzel Washington is standing on stage at the Academy Awards, accepting his Oscar for Best Actor. Instead of getting lost in the glory of the moment, he remembers something his mother told him. Man gives the award, God gives the reward. In interviews later, he revealed how he maintains this perspective. I've been blessed to make it in this business, but I never forget where I came from. Every morning I get on my knees and thank God for another day of possibilities. This eternal perspective isn't about diminishing your achievements. It's about placing them in their proper context. And let me tell you exactly how to develop this viewpoint in your own life. First, let's talk about what I call time traveling. Each morning, spend 5 minutes contemplating 3 questions. What would the version of you from 10 years ago think about your current challenges? What will the version of you 10 years from now think about your current priorities? What would you change about today if you knew you only had 1 year left to live? But here's where it gets interesting. Denzel practices something he calls legacy thinking. Before taking any major role, he asks himself, will this matter in 5 years? Will this contribute to my legacy? During the filming of Flight, he turned down several lucrative opportunities because they didn't align with his long-term vision. That's the power of eternal perspective in action. Now let me share with you a practice that Marcus Aurelius used daily, the Memento Mori review. Each evening he would reflect on the temporary nature of all things, not to become morbid or depressed, but to ensure his actions aligned with what truly matters. Here's how you can implement this. Start with your current biggest challenge. Maybe it's a project at work, a relationship struggle, or a personal goal that seems overwhelming. Now, imagine yourself looking back at this moment from your deathbed. What advice would that future version of you give to your current self? Denzel Washington uses a similar technique when mentoring young actors. He tells them, "You'll never see a U-Haul behind a hearse. You can't take it with you." But then he adds something profound. What you can leave behind is the seed you've planted in others. This brings us to what I call the ripple effect exercise. Take out a piece of paper and draw 3 circles. Inner circle, your immediate impact, family, close friends, daily work. Middle circle, your extended influence, community, profession, industry. Outer circle, your legacy, future generations' lasting contributions. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They focus only on the inner circle, or they try to jump straight to the outer circle without building a strong foundation. The key is to work on all 3 simultaneously, understanding how each action creates ripples across time. Marcus Aurelius understood this perfectly. Even as he dealt with immediate threats to the empire, he wrote his meditations, not for publication, but as a guide for future leaders. Those private journals would end up influencing millions across centuries. That's the power of thinking in eternal time. Let me give you a modern example. When Denzel Washington was filming Remember the Titans, he spent extra hours mentoring the young actors on set. Years later, many of those actors credited him for shaping their careers and personal lives. He wasn't just making a movie, he was creating a legacy of mentorship and excellence. Here's your practical guide to implementing eternal perspective. Morning practice, 15 minutes. Cosmic view meditation, 5 minutes. Visualize your place in the grand scheme of time. Legacy journal, so 5 minutes. Write 1 paragraph about the impact you want to have. Action alignment, 5 minutes. Review your day's tasks through the lens of your legacy. Throughout the day, set 3 perspective triggers. Moments when you pause and zoom out. Before every major decision, ask, how will this matter in the eternal scope of things? Practice what Marcus Aurelius called the view from above, seeing your challenges from a higher perspective. Evening review, 10 minutes. Reflect on the day's ripple effects. Identify 1 eternal principle you honored. Cast and plan 1 legacy-building action for tomorrow. Remember what Denzel says. Success is not a destination, it's a journey. But when you view that journey through the lens of eternal time, every step becomes meaningful, every challenge becomes an opportunity, and every moment becomes a chance to build something that outlasts you. That's the real power of eternal perspective. It transforms the way you see not just your challenges, but your entire existence. And when you change the way you see things, The things you see begin to change. Principle 4. The power of purposeful preparation. You know, there's an old saying that luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. But let me tell you something deeper about preparation that both Marcus Aurelius and Denzel Washington understood. It's not just about being ready. It's about becoming someone who can't be caught unprepared. Picture young Marcus Aurelius, years before becoming emperor, waking up at midnight to study philosophy. His teacher, Rusticus, questioned why he pushed himself so hard when his path to the throne was already secure. Marcus's response tells us everything we need to know about true preparation, because the throne needs not just an heir, but a leader worthy of Rome. That same spirit of deep preparation echoes through time to 1992, when Denzel Washington took on the monumental task of becoming Malcolm X. This wasn't just another role for him. For months, he lived and breathed Malcolm's life. He immersed himself in every book Malcolm had read, trained himself to write with his left hand, and delivered Malcolm's speeches in private until, as he says, Malcolm's words became my words, his thoughts became my thoughts. This kind of preparation goes beyond the surface level that most people settle for. It's what I call deep preparation, the kind that transforms you from someone who can do the job into someone who embodies excellence. Marcus Aurelius understood that an emperor needed to grasp every aspect of governance. He didn't just study philosophy. He mastered law, rhetoric, and military strategy. He knew that true leadership comes from comprehensive understanding. When we look at how Denzel approaches his craft, we see the same dedication to complete mastery. For his role in flight, he spent countless hours in flight simulators. Not just enough to look convincing, but enough to understand the soul of a pilot. When you're playing someone who could be responsible for hundreds of lives, he says, you better know what every single button in that cockpit does. But here's where it gets interesting. Both men understood that technical preparation isn't enough. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." He knew that true preparation happens in the mind first. Each morning, before the weight of the empire fell on his shoulders, he would prepare his mind for the challenges ahead. He would visualize potential obstacles and his composed response to them, a practice he called premeditation of adversity. Denzel brings this same mental preparation to his craft. Before filming difficult scenes, he spends hours in character, walking around, thinking their thoughts. You're not just learning lines, he says, you're learning a way of being. He creates what he calls pressure practice, deliberately making his preparation more challenging than the actual performance will be. When preparing for training day, he would rehearse his most intense scenes at 4 a.m. after a full workout, when he was exhausted. Because anyone can perform when conditions are perfect. Excellence shows up when conditions are tough. Principle 5. The wisdom of strategic response. Now let me tell you something about response that most people never grasp. It's not what happens to you that defines you, it's how you choose to respond. And I mean choose, because that's what both Marcus Aurelius and Denzel Washington understood at a bone-deep level. Transport yourself to Rome, 175 AD. Marcus Aurelius receives devastating news. His most trusted general, Avidius Cassius, has declared himself emperor in Egypt. The empire is splitting. Civil war looms. Most rulers would immediately marshal their legions for war, but Marcus does something extraordinary. He sits down and writes in his journal, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." This same wisdom of response echoes through to 1987, when a young Denzel Washington faces a pivotal moment in his career. He's offered a role that would guarantee him fame and money, but the character perpetuates negative stereotypes. His agents push him to take it. The easy response would be to grab the opportunity. Instead, he responds with what would become his lifelong philosophy. I choose to do what I want to do, not what everyone wants me to do. Both men understood something profound about response. There's always a gap between what happens to us and how we choose to react. Marcus Aurelius called this space our ultimate freedom. In that space, we find our power to choose, to grow, to transform challenge into opportunity. Denzel approaches this with almost religious reverence. Before responding to any major career decision, he follows a simple but powerful rule. Sleep on it, pray on it, then decide. This isn't procrastination, it's strategic patience. It's understanding that our first reaction isn't always our best response. The wisdom of strategic response runs deeper than most realize. When Marcus Aurelius faced that rebellion in Egypt, his response wasn't just about maintaining power, it was about demonstrating wisdom. He wrote personal letters to the rebels' supporters, showing them a path back to loyalty without losing face. When the rebellion was finally quelled, he didn't execute the conspirators as tradition demanded. Instead, he showed mercy, turning enemies into allies. This wasn't weakness, it was strategic strength of the highest order. Denzel Washington demonstrates this same wisdom in modern Hollywood. When faced with criticism or controversy, his response isn't to fire back or defend himself. Instead, he does what he calls letting your work speak. During the filming of Glory, when some criticized his interpretation of the character, he didn't engage in public debates. He simply dug deeper into his preparation, ultimately delivering a performance that won him an Oscar. Excellence, he says, is the best response to criticism. This kind of strategic response requires something both men mastered: the ability to step outside your immediate emotional reaction. Marcus Aurelius would physically pause before responding to any crisis, taking time to write in his journal, examining his thoughts and potential responses. He understood that how you respond to small challenges shapes how you'll handle the big ones. Denzel brings this ancient wisdom to life in modern times. Before responding to any significant situation, he thinks about his mother. Would this response make her proud? It's a simple question, but it cuts through the noise, helping him find responses aligned with his core values. During the production of American Gangster, when creative tensions arose, he would step away, take a walk, and return with solutions instead of complaints. Now, as we wrap up these 5 principles of mental reprogramming, let me tell you something important about transformation. It's not about dramatic changes or overnight success. It's about small, consistent choices that compound over time. Marcus Aurelius didn't become a philosopher king in a day. Denzel Washington didn't become a legend by accident. They both understood that excellence is a habit, built one choice at a time. Think about where you are right now. Maybe you're driving. Maybe you're at the gym. Maybe you're just taking a moment for yourself. Whatever challenge you're facing, whatever goal you're pursuing, understand this: the same principles that guided an emperor and shaped a legend are available to you right now. Start with your inner dialogue. Make it serve your growth, not your fears. Build your discipline through consistent action, not waiting for motivation. Develop that eternal perspective that helps you see beyond immediate challenges. Prepare so thoroughly that excellence becomes inevitable, and master the art of strategic response, turning every obstacle into an opportunity for growth. Remember what Denzel says: fall forward. Every mistake, every setback, every challenge is an opportunity to apply these principles. Marcus Aurelius wrote that each obstacle is actually the path forward, if we have the wisdom to see it and the courage to take it. Before we part ways today, I want you to think about something. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you have a choice. You can wake up as the same person you've always been, or you can wake up as someone who's starting to apply these timeless principles. The choice, as always, is yours. In our next video, we're going to explore how another modern icon applies these Stoic principles to master not just their industry, but their own mind. You won't want to miss it. This is the kind of wisdom that builds legacies. Don't just watch this video and move on. Take a moment right now to share in the comments which of these principles resonated most with you. Your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And remember, as Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." This is Rise Stoically, reminding you that true power isn't in controlling the world around you, it's in mastering the world within you. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and keep rising.